I'm Jenny Pastusak with D3, and I wanted to thank Wendy Wolff from Maryland Nonprofits for joining us today because, a lot of our marketing this month revolves around the nonprofit organizations that, just like for-profit, have struggled with the disruption of COVID. And Wendy, thank you for joining us. But that's my first question. How are nonprofits that you're working with and seeing kind of changing their marketing strategies because of COVID? It hit, and now everyone has to kind of scramble to figure out probably a new plan.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And so I feel like COVID hitting was an opportunity for nonprofits to really take stock in what it is that they do really well and where have they been absent. And so what I mean is that social media and accessing social media and really doing it well and having things lined up and having great content and having a great reach is something that often not all nonprofits, but some of them tend to leave it to, if I have time, right? Because we have very small budgets and we have very skeleton staffs. And so we can only do what we can do. But what we're realizing is that organizations that have a really strong presence, that have great content, that have been doing great work for a long time, those that have that great content are still really doing a lot, and people are taking notice. See, we're all at home and we all have extra time because we're no longer commuting. So we're active participants. So to answer your question, those that have accessed and are doing strong marketing and this is really all anecdotal information, right? Because I didn't do a survey about this. It's not evidence-based, but this is just what I'm seeing with my own clients and our members.
Sure.
Is that those that have strong programs in place around marketing and being very visible in the community are faring a little bit better than those that don't have that and now have to educate themselves on how do you do that? What's Hootsuite? Are we just, many are just on Facebook. We know Facebook has lots of limitations. So this is a great opportunity for those organizations to build that strength, because the folks that have followed them or could follow them, many of them are home. Many of them are working from home. Many of them are looking for inspiration right now.
Right.
So this is actually a great time for nonprofits if we can get over our fear, which is that our donors don't want to fund us right now because they've got other things that they're worrying about. And while that may be true for some, it's not true for all.
Sure. But when you talk about donors, fundraising is a major part of the world of nonprofits, and we can't really have large events anymore. So, then it's a scramble of what's the alternative for an event that used to raise 10 grand or 20 grand, whatever that number is. What do we do now?
I'd say there's no foolproof way. So I just want to get that right out there. People are looking for, what do? We brought in $50,000 at this event last year and we can't do it now. So that is definitely a challenge and will be a challenge. However, the three terms that I've been using the most recently are every organization needs a mission. When you do strategic planning, you do mission, vision, and values. Mm-hmm. Your values right now, your organizational values are the things that ground you to the work that you do. And those have to be activated. So that's the first thing. The second thing is creativity is an innovation. And, I'm going to use the word creativity because I know innovation has like technological, components to it, but really taking the time to think strategically and creatively is a nonprofit's leader's best friend. Because I have come across the most inspiring virtual events that I've even participated in. And personally, I've donated more in the last 4 or 5 months than I've donated in the last year, because I am grateful for first of all, I have more time. I do not have more time, but I'm home. I don't have any more time. We are so busy, but I do not have more time. But let's just say I did. I'm looking at things. I'm going to take my husband, for example. So in the beginning of the pandemic, he works out of the house and he was looking for things to make him feel better. So he started following these 2 penguins at, I forget what zoo it was, Minnesota, I don't remember. And they did this whole thing about these penguins. They followed them all over the place. So he became a donor.
Wow.
We don't even live there, but we love we were so grateful for what they did for us. And I want to tell you another really quick story, because I think this also poses a little competition for nonprofits, but there are bans right now. So if we think about all of the artists, even though they're for-profit businesses, you know, we share some similarity with these creatives who are trying to go, okay, we can never be in person again. What do we do? There is an online virtual format for success for these things to happen. And so as an example, at the beginning of the pandemic, there's a band called Low Cut Connie, and it's a good story. And Low Cut Connie is a piano and a guitar, and they do 100 years of music. Unbelievable.
Oh, wow.
They were playing every Saturday night, pay what you can. And then once they started getting a big following, 200, 300 people every Saturday night on Facebook Live, getting 1 hour of joy. And this guy really was all about, let me into your home. We're in this together. You know, all the nonprofit kind of language, right? All of this do good stuff. And but what he did was, those folks who can pivot their business models back to the creativity piece are being successful. Now, I know this is a nonprofit model, but I'm just giving you an example. He then started this private group on Patreon, and now he's, you know, people can do Venmo, PayPal, Cash App, $50, $20 for a tip. And he has this new business model. Every Thursday night, he's on this private group where people pay monthly to participate, and every Saturday night it's free and open to people, and he's making money. So the idea is, how can we be creative and use this platform? Organizations that pivoted to takeout business for their restaurants. Here's a great story. In Prince George's County, the nonprofits who were worried about their communities eating partnered with the restaurants to keep the restaurants moving and in business and keep people fed. So there's a lot of stuff that can be done if people are taking the time to think strategically and creatively, because that's another thing that happens for us in nonprofits. We are so busy. Everything is so urgent. It needed to happen yesterday. And so we, you know, and I mean, everybody I know could work 24 hours a day and still not get their list taken off, you know, checked off. So the idea is, we must carve out time right now to think about, how visible are we being? How are we accessing our supporters, not just donors? What content are we putting out in the world so that people have hope and something to participate in? And I think if you can do those things, but I want to go back to your first question, which is, if you don't have a social media presence, which takes time to build, then, you know, if you have 200 people that sometimes see your Facebook posts, that's not a thing. If you have 5,000 on Instagram, okay, well then now we're talking. So there's a lot that can be done. And I would recommend that if it were me and I was running a nonprofit that needed to increase my visibility and was worried about donors, I would really get very well versed in, how do you build followers? How do you provide content? How do you do teasers to lead up to a big something? And it can be done. It's being done. There's so many cool things being done.
And that's where I think too, it's important to stay, my third question was about, you know, staying relevant and in front of your audiences, not just your donors, the community that you operate in, the community that you serve. You're right. Everything's virtual now and we're behind screens, but, you know, really thinking outside the box to say, we're still relevant. We're still following our mission, folks. We're still, providing services to these communities of people. Don't forget about us. I really feel like that's probably what,
And we're 10% of the workforce, you know, in the nonprofit world. We do a lot of jobs. I mean, look at what's going on in animal shelters. There's no dogs to be had.
Right.
There's very few. So because people needed comfort. So if we can think about, how can we be comforting with our content, and of course to the people we serve, of course, but and people are still doing a lot of great service. I mean, there's things, people are wearing masks and full PPE and helping their customers and their clients and their consumers. So There's really creative stuff going on around childcare. There's a lot going on.
I really like what you said, comforting with our content, because that kind of, it hits, it tugs at the heartstrings of people that are sitting there going, I've never even heard of this organization, or I want to donate. Like, it's people react that way, and they make these, when they feel like they have, feelings for something, they immediately want to help. And I think that's a beautiful thing.
It's true. And I never forget this. About 20 years ago, maybe less, maybe about 15 years ago, I was doing some work in Florida, and I was sitting in a room. There was a panel of very esteemed Palm Beach philanthropists and fundraisers, and not fundraisers, funding organizations, foundations. And they said, you know how we fund? Through our heart. I mean, I got hearts up there, but we make decisions when there are, and this isn't the only way, of course, somewhere there's a lot of pieces in the matrix, but the relationship and the heart of it is huge. Mm-hmm. And so now we've got to create content knowing, instead of being fear-based of, we got to raise money, what can we keep producing that will help people at home feel cared for, especially your supporters. The worst thing that we can do is be silent. And there is some silence happening from some nonprofits because they're afraid to burden their supporters. Well, you can't do that, because if you're like me, I get the emails and I'm like, okay, I can donate $10 here. I'd be happy to. I'm going to a virtual picnic. I've never supported Parks and People. I really love their work. They're having a virtual picnic. I got nothing to do, so I'm gonna go. It'll be fun. $25. I mean, that's not a little bit of money, but I'm supporting a good organization. I'm not going to Starbucks every day. I'm going. It's great. Right.
We had
more people should do that too.
An executive director for our local zoos organization. She was great at raising funds, and she said, if I came up to you, Jenny, and said, hey, could you donate $10,000? And I would be like, oh my gosh, I can't even believe she would think I could donate $10,000. I'm not offended that she asked me. She's like, it doesn't hurt to ask. Either you're going to get it, or they're going to say, well, I can't really donate 10, but I can donate 2. And it was a beautiful, the way she phrased it, she's like, you're not going to hurt anyone's feelings by asking them to donate. Either they're going to say yes, they're going to say no, they're going to say maybe in this capacity, my time, but it doesn't hurt anyone's feelings to ask, ever.
Yeah. And remember that people are home and they're wanting connection. And so what can you do? The arts organizations and the animal organizations and the zoos, they have a lot that they can do right now. They can provide content online. I mean, you can do anything in the world right now. You can visit anywhere. You can participate in anything. How could you not? This is not contained to my little Baltimore County or Baltimore City. This is, I could get supporters across the country if I was thinking this through, if I was spending more time strategically and creatively thinking about that. So
it's broad. It can broaden your audience, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And it doesn't just happen. It takes work. You've got to nurture. You've got to, there's a whole method. I mean, probably know more about that than I am. I'm no social media expert, but I understand it. I get it. I know it takes time. I know you can't just put up a GoFundMe page and, and then it just makes it work. It's like you need to curate it and populate it and get people to look at it and all of those things. And so, but there's promise, there's possibility.